Thank you so much for joining us today for today's Meet an Expert Career webinar. So with me today, I have Tiffy, who is here to talk to us all about making career transitions and maintaining your financial stability while you do that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tiffy.
Thank you for having me here. How's everything going with you?
Yeah, all good, all good. How have you been?
It's been a great day. Can't complain.
Very good. Yeah, before we get started, just to let our attendees know, if you have any questions for Tiffy, just type them into the chat, and I'm sure Tiffy will be more than happy to answer them for you. And please just let us know, I guess, where you're at in your career, and I guess if you're looking for specific guidance in a specific area, that kind of thing, please just type it into the chat. So I guess to start off, Tiffy, I guess, can you perhaps tell us a bit about your personal career journey?
Yeah, for sure. So I worked for 7.5 years in the FMCG world, so big multinational company. I was working first in Argentina, got transferred to Australia, and basically for a long while I knew it wasn't the right role for me, but I had no clue what else I could do that would fulfill me and I would be happy, right? So I started this journey of reading tons of books, and at a certain point in time, it happened like it over a few years, but one day reading one of these books, I was able to sort of come to a purpose that I found resonated with me and I believed in it. And for me, my why is basically because I was quite unhappy for so many years at my job. I want to help others who are not happy transition to a life of fulfillment. And what I realized is there's many jobs that can actually fulfill on that purpose. And instantly a lot of people would think, oh, you're a coach or a mentor or whatever, and not necessarily. So in 2019, I ended up leaving the FMCG role I had after 7.5 years of that same company. And first I started, I went into my own startup. Now I had been working on a project for like a year with 2 business partners, and a month after quitting, we realized it wasn't viable, and we had to either make some big changes to make it viable or just go in another direction. And basically the changes, neither one of us were really happy about what needed to be true for the company to be viable. So we decided to just let it go. But I was the only one who had quit the job, like my job to do that full time. So basically I was like, okay, what do I know a lot of? I'm passionate, fulfills my purpose. And that was property investments. I had started that same year, like 3 months before, I had gone and bought 3 houses after taking a few courses and learning a lot and acquiring knowledge. And I was starting to see the results already. So I was like, okay, I can start teaching these. And basically I transitioned into property investing, right? But I think it was key. I was sort of pushed into that, but also I believed in it because I had already done it with my own money, and I could see how it was working for me.
And so I guess you mentioned that you kind of had to do a bit of self-reflection to kind of figure out where you wanted to go after you left your corporate job. And I guess if there's anyone out there who's maybe wondering, I guess, or trying to figure out what they're supposed to do or what their why is, I suppose, what advice would you have for them?
Okay, so we're all unique, right? What works for me doesn't work for others. And I did start doing a lot of lists, and I didn't know what that role looked like, but I knew things I wanted and things that I didn't want. And for instance, I'm very passionate about like putting things into place and taking action and being able to deploy. So for instance, roles that would be more in strategy, very long term wouldn't work for me. because I want to be able to implement something and see the results and optimize. I knew I wanted to have some freedom of choice, freedom of working with the people I actually want to work, where I want to be working from, at the times that make sense to me. And I love working. It's not that I want to be lying at the beach all day. I simply wanted to have more freedom to choose. So for me, my own startup makes a lot of sense. I'm currently working at Wealthi. I'm not one of the co-founders, but it still ticks, let's say 9 out of 10 boxes. And I always say, like, the perfect job, the perfect investment doesn't exist. As long as it ticks 9 out of 10 boxes, it's great. And basically, just do lists of things that you want and things that you don't want, or things that you know that you don't enjoy from your current role and you want to stay away from them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I can also give some recommendations on books that have helped me. Yeah. So probably the book that has helped me the most in figuring out my life purpose is Think and Grow Rich. It's a book written by Napoleon Hill. I think it was written like in the 1930s or something like that. It's a really old book, but everything that he says is still valid today. It's not a soft, easy book to read. So I know, like, when I started, I've read it 1.5 times, and I sort of go by chunks because you could get a little bit like overwhelmed by how much information the book has. But that was the book that made a big click. And whenever I've discussed with other people, what are those books that really like changed you? Think and Grow Rich is one that I hear so often, and I really, really recommend.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess in terms of making a successful transition to another career path, because I guess it's one thing to figure out what you want to do, but then it's another thing to kind of execute that properly. So I guess, can you maybe give us some advice on how to successfully make that transition?
Okay, so I do believe in planning, but plans are just that, and things change. And just like I said, I planned my transition with 9 months in advance, and a month after I quit, like, basically I didn't have a startup anymore. I didn't have an idea to work on, right? And so I do like the entire let's plan. And some people think that you have to go all in. Some others like the safety of doing it after work hours and try to escalate something until you cannot cope with the after work hours anymore. I don't think there's one right way or the other. I have come to the conclusion that for me, whenever I'm trying something, I need to give my 110% to that, because otherwise I can basically, it's very hard for me to distribute my energies across a million different things, right? Having said that, I think it's really, really important. Like, you don't need to just quit and then start working on your project. I think you should be like doing things in parallel and trying to validate as much as possible before quitting. I think that's a safer bet. And basically the reason why then property investing made so much sense for me is I realized that the biggest hurdle, like the biggest barrier to changing careers, is usually the financial component. Like, we all have to live, pay bills, pay food or whatever. And for me, that's where I understood the importance of passive income, because I want to make sure that in my life, I'm able to change careers and start new projects many, many times. And the moment that you're thinking, oh, it's time to start all over again, and that might mean no salary or a huge pay cut, that's a tricky one, and it's not easy. And as we grow and we have more responsibilities, I don't have kids, right? Like, you have a family, it's hard, it becomes harder and harder. However, if you take one step at a time and you start building little by little a passive income, with years that passive income grows, and basically I become less reliant on my job to generate an income. So basically what I'm doing is my job and salary is different to my income, really. I'm just separating them and I'm not as reliant. But talking to people who are right now thinking, I want to change careers, I don't have a passive income and I want to do it, plan, try to triple task and do as many things as you can for the time being whilst you're trialing. But the one thing that you can research as much as you want, at some point you will have to go and take action and take the jump. And without going and doing it, you'll never know, right? And I've interviewed a lot of people who have changed careers, and I ask always the same question: is would you go back to your old job? And in 100% of the questions, the answer is no, I wouldn't. It wasn't easy. No one's saying it's easy, but once you've taken that jump, you don't want to go back to what you were doing before.
And so I guess you mentioned that like your job and your income can sometimes be separate things. So can you maybe talk to us a bit more about that?
Yes. So for many years, I was an employee. I got paid a salary and I started saving, right? I didn't know what else to do. Let's save it. And I think building the practice of saving is a really good skill. And at a certain point, I realized, okay, I want freedom. I want freedom from, like, a lot of these books that I started reading talk about what Robert Kiyosaki calls the rat race. So Robert Kiyosaki is a huge writer. His best known book, bestseller, is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he describes the rat race as in, we go into a job, we earn a salary. As we start evolving in our careers, our salary goes up. And usually instead of saving more, we just increase our cost of living. And basically we get a partner. We're crowded in a 1-bedroom apartment and we say, why don't we go and buy something bigger? And so we get a mortgage. And suddenly with each increase in our pay, like in our salary, we basically end up increasing our cost of living. And instead of becoming less reliant on our job, we're now more and more reliant on that salary, right? So for me, it's okay. I want to make sure that before I go and buy my own home, because my own home is not an investment, like your own home takes money out of your bank account every month, whereas an investment should be putting money into your bank account every month. So I said, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice and delay having my own home for a few years whilst I start investing, and each investment puts a bit of money into my bank account. So with time, if my salary goes up or down, it doesn't matter as much because I'm becoming less and less reliant on that job and that income. So my income right now, when I look at where my income streams come from, a part of it could come from my salary, and a part could come from my own business, and a part could come from my investments, right? So I'm basically trying to make it more on the investment side because it's sort of like a system. No matter whether I wake up or not to work, it basically generates an income. When it's a business, you have to make sure if you've created a correct system, if you're not working it with, like if you go on holidays, you still get paid. If you're like a business owner where there's no system, the moment that you have to take a week off, you're not working and you're not getting paid, then that's a bit tricky. So I'm more like inclined to generate systems that of passive incomes basically. And that's how I started looking at it. And what I'm aiming for is what I call financial freedom or financial independence, which is my cost of living is covered by my passive income, right? Now, that doesn't mean I'm rich, not at all, because if I keep my cost of living low, that's way easier to achieve. Whereas if I keep increasing my cost of living and getting like a car lease and a huge mortgage, etc., it's going to become way harder to achieve it, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so I guess in terms of finding ways to make a passive income, I guess apart, you mentioned like property investment. Are there, I guess, other ways that you can do that?
Yeah, there's so many ways to do that, right? And I I always repeat, one size doesn't fit all. And whatever you choose as the way you want to generate a passive income needs to fit you. You need to understand it first and foremost. You need to sort of believe in it, enjoy it, want to do some research about it. And it will have to be linked to what your risk appetite is, right? Like there's so many things to consider. What's your budget? So for instance, you could decide to go into the stock market. That's one way. You could decide to buy jewelry and art. There's many different asset classes. Like there's gold. There's like, you could go and write books and get royalties. You could write songs and get royalties. Like there's quite a few different ways to, once you, like the first few, let's call it months of whatever that investment is, it will take hard work of you creating a system and putting it into place and acquiring the knowledge. And it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. But once you set up that system, then the idea is that you get paid no matter what, really, right? It is true that from time to time, you will have to go and check on your investments, but it should be like a soft touch, not you creating another job. Like it shouldn't be an additional job, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I guess as you, when we talk about passive income, I guess like there's a lot of people advertising out there, like here's an opportunity to make a passive income or, you know, make quick bucks or something, and not all of them are legitimate. So what would your advice be for people to kind of how they can like spot a scam?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, right? And I love the online world, and I've had people trust me without even knowing each other. It's like, great, this is amazing. But it's always great to understand whenever someone's promoting something, I want to make sure that I'm following advice that they implement themselves. So like they walk their talk, right? If I'm advocating for property investments, it's because first I've tried it with my own money and it has worked. And I learned from people who are in a more advanced journey. So that's usually one of my first recommendations to anyone is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to find someone who's more advanced than you in what you're trying to do and try to learn from what they've done right. And they probably have learned from their own mistakes. So you're trying to avoid as many. Of course, you don't want to get caught in analysis paralysis. Like you can always find more information, but basically someone who, your gut feel is really important, right? If you've talked with someone and they seem like a person that you trustworthy, that they walk their talk and they've seen with their own money the results, then great. Like that's someone I would want to be learning from. And just like I first did and had to pay for a course in property investments and I started doing it with my own money, I didn't have all of the money to get started. So in my first 3 deals, I had to go and find investors and did a few different things. Like I did joint venture agreements and angel investors, and I won't go into the details. And I had to find people who trusted me without me having any prior experience. But basically, I just put the numbers together, everything that I had learned, and people who knew me trusted me. And they had, like, one of them that believed in me first had worked with me in the FMCG world. He's like, we worked together and I trusted you when we were working. Why wouldn't I trust you now? The other one was a close friend of mine. And when I'm working with friends and family, what I would always do is put a contract in place. I like things being talked up front, no surprises, like straight rules, expectations. I always believe that any issues with people, whether it's at work or anything, come from mismatching expectations. So the more things you can talk upfront and discuss, that will set you in a better situation, just so that you're not expecting A and then B happens and mismatching expectations make it a big deal, basically, and a problem. Yeah, that's just follow your gut feel, but also always ask people to show you what their portfolio looks like. I don't mind talking about what I own. because I think that as I become more advanced, I'm going to achieve bigger and better things, and I'll keep learning. And I wouldn't want, I have nothing against anyone who preaches other asset classes, as long as they are investing their money in what they're preaching, basically.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, just a reminder that if anyone has questions, please type them into the chat. And so I guess kind of going more back to the career transition aspect. So I guess like in terms of, because I guess when you're thinking of doing a career transition, you might think, well, I don't have the skills or the experience or something like that. So how do you sell yourself, I suppose, to employers, or have the confidence to pursue that new career path when you don't necessarily have that experience or qualifications?
Yeah. So I believe the first thing that needs to happen is that I need to believe in my own self. If I don't believe in my own self, it's going to be very hard for others to believe in me, right? And I've had this conversation with quite a few different friends so many times about them saying like, I want to go for this role, but it feels a bit too big for me. And it's like, why? So self-confidence plays a huge role, and working on your self-confidence is a big thing. There's a whole chapter in this book, Think and Grow Rich, about it and how you can practice it. I want to be fair and say I'm not a person who struggles with self-confidence. I have a lot of other issues, but self-confidence is not one of them. So if I believe in something, I'm just gonna, I come out as very passionate, and I believe people just buy into what I believe in, basically. So probably it's about first working on your own self-confidence, believing in your own self, practicing it, and just if you don't think you're ready for something, then just go for one less step, really. Like you could always offer, when you're in that career transition, I know we all want to go for career transition and for our salaries not to suffer, but you could be offering yourself for free for a month, for instance, or for 2 weeks, or for a week, or whatever it is, really, it doesn't matter. You could do it as a part thing on the weekends, but as long as you can show people, prove people that you're passionate and you believe in yourself, others will believe in you. That's what I think.
Yeah. And so I guess in terms of finding transferable skills between different industries or career paths, how do you think people can do that?
That's an interesting one, and it's I think that skills, like we know what we like and dislike, and we can always acquire new skills, right? So I've always enjoyed numbers, for instance, and I'm an engineer, so my background is that I've studied a lot of numbers, and I think that my degree has given me like structure in the way that I analyze and I think. Not that I'm going to go and build anything, like I've probably had too many subjects of things that I will never implement, but it has helped me on how I address problems. So in different roles across my career, I've practiced different things. And one of the things, for instance, that I picked up is that I really enjoy project management, right? So I changed careers into the property investment world, and I went into a sales role that I had never done before, realized that I actually enjoy sales a lot. And now as the team at Wealthi is growing, I'm sort of going to be still involved in sales, but from a different angle, doing a lot of project management because we will have a lot of people joining our team. So I was like, okay, I changed careers and I was trying to use my numbers and things that I'm passionate about and learning a lot about sales that I've never done before and acquiring more and more skills, and I need to keep learning and developing that. Now, there's other skills that I've always known I really enjoy that I have not been using for the last year or two, or maybe I have used but in a different way, not the traditional project management way, and now I'm back using them, right? So I've changed careers, and within this new career, I'm now changing roles again. And that makes it interesting to me. I'm actually enjoying it because I want to keep learning as much as possible. And like, it's a whole new industry where as my job keeps evolving, I'm gonna meet a lot of new people, and I can learn from people. My role will evolve. I can learn from the role, connections. Yeah, it's just being aware. I think it's more about that awareness of things that I enjoy and I don't enjoy, so that anytime that I'm doing a change, and I try to look for the positives of things that I've enjoyed in the past and I can go back to doing.
Yeah. So I guess it sounds like you've had quite varied work experience from different industries. And do you think that in some ways that can be a positive sometimes when you're applying for jobs or looking for new opportunities, because you can draw on all of those like those different experiences, and you have this kind of wide range of knowledge and skills?
Yeah, 100%. As in, everyone will make their own journey. And sometimes I do believe that maybe I'm not even aware of things as skills that I might have used 7 years ago. And one day I have to go and use them for whatever reason. I'm like, wow, I did this. And this is an advantage. It's a point of difference. So I always believe in using those things that set you apart from the rest of the people as your point of difference. When I was doing a career in marketing, and within those 7.5 years, I went into one particular role that was out of marketing and sometimes and in between marketing and sales, but it was a lot of numbers, etc. It was tough because I sort of had to start all over again, and there was a very big learning curve in the first 3 months. And I hadn't had that for 4 years because I had always been in that marketing and it felt very similar. Now, that role then set me apart when I wanted to go back into marketing and I was interviewing versus other people. I was the only one with that unique experience, and that set me apart, and that made it good, right? And now, as I work in property investments, there's a lot of people in this industry that advocate for property investments and they don't own any property as an investment, which is weird, right? Mm-hmm. I only have a few months in the industry, but I'm like, I believe in what I'm selling. I can walk my talk. I can talk from experience, from my own experience. I can draw from friends. And for me, it's all about, just making your experience and your journey and everything you've lived through the most on your unique point of view, basically. And people do want to hear what you've learned from other experiences that are your own, really.
Yeah. So if again, if anyone has questions for Tiffy, please type them into the chat. And I mean, if you would like to speak one-on-one with us, we're also happy to do that. Just keep in mind that we are recording. So I guess then a lot of I guess how you kind of promote yourself, I guess, comes down to kind of developing your own unique brand, I suppose, or showing people how you are unique. And I guess what would your advice be to people on how to kind of showcase your uniqueness?
I believe in the power of networks and communities and connecting with people and having a chat, not necessarily asking for anything. When I wanted, so I did all of 2019, I worked by myself in my startup. And then by December, I decided that I needed a more stable income. And I had someone who had been a mentor to me mention 2 months before, I can introduce you to 2 guys who have their own startup. I was like, in that December, I was like, okay, I'm ready for you to introduce me to them. And basically we caught up 1, 2, 3 times, and they decided to give me a chance with no experience in the industry, with no experience in sales, just because they saw how passionate I was and how much I believed in it, right? And for me, it's sometimes you do have to go and ask favors, but I much rather sit down with someone and ask for their advice. And you might then, instead of getting an advice, you might get a job offer, right? So I want to be fair and say that I did have to interview in the past. I have not interviewed for quite a long while. And in this particular role, it was an introduction of someone and then just an informal catch up and me talking about my experience and my strategy investing and what I believed in. And I always believe in being true to your own self. I am very aware that I'm not the best when it comes to interviews. I don't perform as well. I'm not sure that I always say the right things. So I much rather go for like those informal catch-ups, coffee catch-ups. And that's the thing. You can always ask someone for like a coffee catch-up where you invite them 30 minutes and you're asking them for advice. And I think that takes you way further.
So I guess like in terms of when you're trying to build up that personal network, like what do you think are some of the best ways to, I guess, find people to network with?
Yeah, I had a really, really good time. And it's very, very niche to what my situation was, right? So I was wanting to go into the startup world. And therefore, I joined a community called Fish Burners. Fish Burners is a co-working space. They have a few different offices. I'm based in Sydney. And they had Friday night pitches. So like a few startups would go and pitch what they were working on. And they encourage you to go and network before and after the pitch, 1 hour pitches. So basically you go there just to meet people that you've never met before and go and chat. And not that necessarily introduced me to people who gave me a job, but yes, it did help me in that networking process. I started attending pitch nights. I went for like a few different competitions. I found mentors. Mentors referred me to people, and you never know like the power of a network, really. So I like that face-to-face interaction. COVID has made it harder. So there's communities. I just like I attended the Friday night pitches, then I started organizing my own quarterly investor catch-ups here in Sydney, in the area where I live. And it started growing, and we were like, everyone comes, buys their own coffee. And suddenly we started growing a network of people that now we have people investing like in Australia, New Zealand, UK, US, and other areas as well. And you're just listening to other people's experiences. And then you start like learning about people who've invested in the same city you have and have recommendations on things. And it's just the power of networks. So there's no one right answer. If you could do a face-to-face because COVID in your city allows it, I would recommend that you start looking for just meetups, right? That makes sense with what you're after.
Yeah. And so I guess so if anyone has any questions, please submit them now because we are kind of coming towards the end of the webinar. So I guess to finish up, I guess what would you say are, I guess, the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to their career journeys, and what are the best things you can do?
Okay, so I think the biggest mistake is never taking action. And it's a tough one. And I want to say that it's the same mistake for never getting started with property investments or any investments that you want to go for and not changing careers. Just you can do your research, acquire information, catch up with people, learn from others. But at some point, you'll have to take the jump, right? And it's not easy. There's some fear involved. Look for your support network, but just take action. You won't regret it. No matter what we're talking about, you won't regret it. So that's my number one like advice to everyone. And when I've seen people make mistakes is when they delay it and life goes by. I don't think it's never too late, but like I had my mom change careers when she was 55 years old. So she had done like 30 years working at a school, and then she went into the real estate world as well. So the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. And it was like, yeah, she was ready for a change probably 15 years ago, but it's never too late. Just go for it. So that's my first advice. Other, yeah, and just if you are considering a certain industry, just try to catch up with people who have done it.
Okay, great. So I think that is all we have time for today. So thank you so much for that, Tiffy. I really appreciate it. We just to let you guys know, we do have a quick feedback survey that you can fill out, and please do let us know in that survey what other topics you're interested in hearing about and that kind of thing. And I guess finally, to finish up, Tiffy, I guess if anyone wants to kind of, keep in touch with you or that kind of thing, what's the best way to do that?
You can reach out. I try to be as open in social media as possible. So my LinkedIn is Tiffy Rubinat. My Facebook is Tiffy Rubinat. I'm not great at Instagram, but again, Tiffy Rubinat. And just reach out. Like I'm always happy to answer questions on career changes or any topic that I find I'm passionate about. I won't mind. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Great. Yeah, once again, thank you so much, Tiffy, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thanks. Have a lovely evening.
You too. Bye.
Thanks everyone for joining. Bye-bye.